dkdynamite, and tonight we're going to be talking about what could be confirmation that we're actually going to be seeing a TRANZIT remake inside of Black Ops 7 Zombies. Definitely stay tuned. Now, although I've been on the fence about this topic, especially when it comes to BO7, I do think we got definitive evidence within the Reckoning that does suggest some type of spiritual successor or reimagining of TRANZIT, which I do believe is going to be a lot bigger than what I initially anticipated. Now, typically I make videos like this right after the launch of a new round-based map, since within the current map we usually get some type of tease towards where we're going next, and the ending cutscene didn't necessarily give us a clue as to what map we're going to be seeing, but obviously with the return of the original characters, things are going to be crazy. Now, what I will say is, when looking back at the original rumor that Black Ops 7 would offer an 8-player zombies mode, that has me thinking that not only could we see Grief come back, which we'll circle back to in just a little bit, but the possibility of being able to play as both this new version of Ultimus and the Requiem crew really has me intrigued to see what the dialogue could be like if it is a step up from the actual interactions we saw within Black Ops 6 Zombies. But it's always possible that we'll be playing as this new version of Ultimus while Requiem talks to us on comms again, or they could even mix and match the crews like what we saw in Alpha Omega. Now, what I will say is that Victus also needs a little bit more closure. Maybe we'll get a new version of that crew at some point as well, considering that a TRANZIT remake would be perfectly fitting to see some type of follow-up to what happened to Victus at the end of Tag Der Toten. Now, while 8-player zombies could make sense as far as the scale of this experience, as right now it's rumored to be the largest round-based map to date, I still don't think it's just going to be a case where you could spawn in with 8 people and just get through an Easter egg or do whatever you want to do. It's also not Outbreak, as we saw in Modern Warfare Zombies, where there's multiple squads spawning into this map. I mean, that could be something we see in the future again, but with the way Black Ops 7 Zombies has been marketed thus far, which as of now has been very little, I do think it's going to be a regular round-based map, even if it is the biggest one. Now, Insider the Ghost of Hope did put out this tweet shortly after the launch of Season 5, which says Zombies is rumored to have one round-based map at launch. Outbreak is planned, but unclear if it's launch as well. Personally, if you ask me, I don't think Outbreak's going to be releasing anywhere close to the launch of the game. I think if anything, they'll probably kick that off around, I want to say Season 3 or the middle of Black Ops 7's life cycle, and whether or not they use Avalon as the space for Outbreak is unknown. They're already going to be using that for co-op campaign and maybe a Warzone at some point. But to build on this, Insider Gaming has reported that Black Ops 7 Zombies has 6 total round-based maps. I'm assuming that includes the launch experience, so if anything, this is a good step forward to ensure we don't see that bad of a drought as we got between Seasons 3 and 5 of Black Ops 6, because I think having 5 more round-based maps after the launch experience would at least ensure that we could maybe get 5 seasons in a row with a round-based map. And I don't know about you guys, but I wouldn't mind having Season 6 be the only season we don't get a new map, since that season will be focused on the Haunting, Halloween crossovers, and the beta/marketing for the next game anyway. But with the rumors of this being the largest map to date, I think launching with just this alongside Dead Ops Arcade 4 is appropriate, especially if you kick off the post-launch cycle with more round-based maps with, late Season 1, which is probably going to be a good month and a half after the launch of this game. I don't see why that could be an issue if the map itself is packed with a ton of different content. But the main reason I wanted to make this video is because a piece of intel called A Great Voice from Beyond was discovered in the boss fight of The Reckoning, and I do believe they purposely placed this intel in the boss fight because a ton of folks out there still haven't completed the Easter egg yet, so this is one of those pieces of intel that purposely is hidden in either the main Easter egg or an obscure part of the map, because it does contain a spoiler for what comes next. Now, I'll leave the link down below to the detonated codex where you can listen to the full 2-minute audio of Dr. Panos, but there is a lot to take away from this intel that I think has finally convinced me that we could be seeing a TRANZIT reimagining, and maybe even more than just a spiritual successor with a transportation system, but an actual one-to-one of the original Green Run within the Dark Aether. So Panos mentions seeing a bunch of mist and fog, he notices how bright things are inside of the Dark Aether, and he specifically mentions a farmhouse, a sunken town, a cabin, and what I believe is a reference to the diner where he says, and I quote, "When I felt a yawning hunger deep in my belly, the voice guided me towards a place of nourishment. My eyes feasted upon its saturated colors, and my appetite was swiftly sated." He says, my thirst was soon quenched and I knew for sure this was so much more than a mere dream when I read the sign. Right when I read that, I'm like, wait a second, that just sounds like he's describing the diner, but he continues. He also mentions a floating pyramid, which I think upon first glance reminded a lot of us OG fans of the MPD that we saw back in Moon, Black Ops 1. But what if this is referencing the floating construct that we saw in Vanguard Zombies? I still think one of the coolest concepts that we got introduced to within Vanguard was the idea of taking control of the construct and becoming an Archon. That was of course the goal of Cortifex, I believe the goal at one point of the Forsaken, and I thought that was the direction they were taking either Maxis or Richtofen, where they could maybe fight to become the Archon, but maybe they're saving that for Black Ops 7 with a different character like Panos or some Shadowsmiths, we're just not sure. But Panos also mentions a tower that stood tall, which right away, if you guys are familiar with Transit, you'll remember the pylon, which was used for the Tower of Babel Easter egg. Now, what really convinced me that this wasn't a coincidence is that he says the foul wretches were wandering through for prey. So that just screams to me, no pun intended, the denizens which he may have come across while navigating through what I believe is Green Run. So after hearing all those locations that we already have within the original Transit, what would be the odds that this isn't referencing the original Transit? That's something that I want to leave you guys with in the comments. But the blog does say that we're going to be exploring the heart of the Dark Aether with round-based zombies in Black Ops 7, so that's where I'm also connecting this piece of intel to the Black Ops 7 reveal that we're going to be seeing a Transit reimagining of some sort that's round-based, not Outbreak, that is set in the Dark Aether as the intel also suggests. But when taking all of this into account and looking at the older leaks for Black Ops 7 Zombies, it does look like maybe at one point in time they were just going to work on a giant map that had a transportation system, which may have been changed to be or was always supposed to be a one-to-one of Green Run from Black Ops 2, and ironically, Black Ops 7 is a direct sequel to the original Black Ops 2. Now, before I saw the intel that we just went over, I was also in the same boat as many of you guys, which is that I'll believe a Transit remake when I see it, as I also mentioned in my previous Black Ops 7 zombie video. So maybe Ted being in the Vault Edition of BO7 actually means a lot more than meets the eye at this point. It's not just the case like we saw with Brutus or Klaus in the BO6 Vault Edition where they're just fan favorite characters that became playable. Ted might actually play a bigger role than we're expecting at the launch of BO7. Now, what I'm also thinking is that this could be Treyarch's real opportunity to remake Transit from the ground up. I mean, not just in the Dark Aether, but the idea of Transit being fleshed out on current gen hardware that could support such an ambitious project, which was obviously watered down quite a bit for the PS3 and the Xbox 360. Something that they started to do with Black Ops 6, which hasn't really been done since BO2, is taking arenas of specific round-based maps and having different game modes be playable on those arenas. With this map seemingly being extremely massive, I would think that they're going to be reusing some of those POIs, whether it's the farm, whether it's the lab, the town, the diner, for modes like Grief, or maybe even Turned, and other modes that never made the cut inside of Black Ops 2. But it's really worth thinking about what ways we're going to be seeing this Transit reimagining within the Dark Aether. I mean, it feels like denizens were only put in place on last gen to prevent us from getting from point A to point B too quickly, because the map needed a little bit of extra time to load because of a lot of hardware limitations. So with the idea of a faithful reimagining on current gen hardware, I wonder what will be filling in those gaps in between, let's say, the town to the bus depot to the diner, then the farm. And I'm also curious if, because it's in the Dark Aether, will it be more like kind of what we saw within Vanguard Zombies, or more so, let's say, Revelations with these islands and a beautiful skybox? I'm really curious to see how they end up putting a spin on this version of what was arguably one of the most poorly received zombie maps back in 2012. Now, it could almost be like when we first spawned in as Primus in Blood of the Dead, since we really only knew that map with our prison crew from Mob of the Dead. But that is about it, ladies and gentlemen. This has been dkdynamite. Leave our thoughts down below in the comment section. Gamescom isn't far away, and I'm sure considering that the Reckoning's been solved now, Treyarch's probably going to start marketing Black Ops 7 Zombies relatively soon, and with that will probably come direct confirmation that we are indeed going to see a Transit reimagining. But with that being said, really hope you've enjoyed, and peace out, everybody.